Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will answer questions 2, 5 and 7 together. Under this Prime Minister and this government, before the next election, we will replace the Human Rights Act with a Bill of Rights to end the abuse of the framework and the system by dangerous criminals and restore some common sense.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Justice Secretary claims that his reforms will protect free speech, a right that already receives special protection in the Human Rights Act. Yet simultaneously, the government wants to criminalise the right to protest through the policing bill, and there are already plans to take away whistleblower protections in the Official Secrets Act. Is it all free speech the Justice Secretary aims to protect, or only the kind his government wants to hear?
Secretary. Can I thank the Honourable Lady? She actually raised a good substantive point. We do want to strengthen and reinforce the right of free speech, in particular, given, for example, some of the judge-led privacy law that we've seen, but also some of the encroachments on free speech that we've seen in political debate. I think constituents on all sides of the House would recognise a difference between free speech, lawful protest and, frankly, the downright sabotage that we've seen by groups like Extinction Rebellion, which we're quite right to legislate to protect the freedoms of others.
Mr. Carmichael.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is not new territory for the Secretary of State. He's been round this course. He failed last time, of course, because he could only do what he wanted by leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. That's still the situation now. So is it going to be government policy that we should follow the human rights example of Belarus in leaving the protections of the Convention?
I thank the honourable gentleman, and we have been round this House a few times. It is precisely because our reforms through a Bill of Rights can make a substantial difference by injecting some common sense without leaving the European Convention that we will proceed. I'll give him just one example with the permission of the Speaker. I visited H&P Franklin in Durham, high security Cat A prison. One of the challenges in dealing with terrorist offenders, particularly those that could infect the minds of others, is the issue of separation centres. We're increasingly seeing litigation claims claiming the Article 8 right as a right to socialise getting in our way. That's a good example of the common sense approach, the balance we want to have. I'm very surprised he's opposed to it.
Sorry. Stuart C. MacDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The position is that the government commissioned an independent review, didn't like the conclusions, and so has simply just ditched them. So why should anyone have any faith that the government is going to listen to their consultation responses if it's so hell-bent on pursuing what Sir Geoffrey Bindman QC has labelled as an indefensible, inward-looking and cowardly retreat from human rights?
Well, I'm very grateful for the independent Human Rights Act review. We looked, and I looked very carefully at all the recommendations, some of which we take on board, others we're going to innovate in different areas. But I'll just give one example. I suspect his constituents would want us to reform the situation which allows foreign national offenders, whether they are living in Scotland or any other part of the UK, would want us to reform the system to stop them from frustrating deportation orders on the most flimsy, elastic grounds created by Article 8. That's something that we will do, and I think he should support.
Chair of the Select Committees, Robert Neal.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful that my right honourable friend made reference to the independent review of the Human Rights Act. I'm sure he'll want to join me in thanking the right honourable Sir Peter Gross, the chair of that review, and his colleagues for their exceptionally hard and diligent work in this regard. Sir Peter gave evidence to the Justice Committee last week. He pointed out that whilst the government have indeed published their own consultation document, a Human Rights Act Reform, a Modern Bill of Rights, that document is not in fact a response to the independent Human Rights Review report. Can my right honourable friend confirm that it would only be fair and courteous to Sir Peter and his colleagues to ensure that once the consultation on the government's document has concluded, the government's response to that consultation includes a full response to Sir Peter's panel's review, including detailed replies to all of the points it does or does not accept, exactly as was done with the Fawkes review?
Well, can I thank my honourable friend, the chair of the Select Committee? First of all, I've already thanked the chair and indeed all the panel, but I'm happy to join with him in doing so again. I think that the IRA panel produced a very well considered and very useful report. I considered it very carefully. The consultation that we're pursuing is, of course, ongoing, including, and I think this is quite an important point, areas beyond the terms of reference of the IRA report, including adding things like recognition of the right to trial by jury, strengthening the freedom of expression, as honourable members have already raised. There are also areas where the government wishes to explore only a subset of the options considered by that review, and Section 3 is a good illustration of that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Deputy Prime Minister outline how his reforms to the Human Rights Act and a new British Bill of Rights can help us take back control of our borders and stop the small boats crisis in the Channel?
Secretary.
Can I thank my honourable friend? Clearly the issue of small boats goes well beyond issues in the ECHR, but what I would say to him more generally is that the reforms that we are pursuing allow us to take more firm action under the Nationality and Borders Bill, also under wider powers to deal with foreign national offenders, and he should be aware that some 70% of claims by foreign national offenders scuppering deportation orders are under Article 8. That's clearly an area where we can reform.
SNP spokesperson, Anne McLaughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I just say I'm tired of hearing the rights of asylum seekers so desperate to get here that they'll go on these dangerous boats, conflated with dangerous foreign national offenders, and he needs to stop. He needs to stop drawing a parallel there. I wanted to actually echo the words of the Chair of the Select Committee in calling for a full response to Sir Peter Gross QC, because I do wonder why they bothered to appoint him if they weren't going to listen to him. But will the Secretary of State at least agree with his first recommendation, which is that there should be a full and robust programme of education about what the Human Rights Act actually is, or would that be a bit of a hindrance to this government's programme of misinformation?
Can I thank the honourable ladies? Precisely through the process of consultation on our proposals for a Bill of Rights that I think we can eke out, have a proper substantive debate, listen to all sides of the argument and inject some common sense back into the system and disseminate that more widely, and I think constituents on all sides of the House would appreciate that.
So the other thing that he keeps on doing is saying that we have to review this because there are so many dangerous foreign criminals. But will he listen to the UK security services, who know more about dangerous foreign criminals than he does? And they've warned that overhauling the Human Rights Act could affect their ability to provide evidence in secret. Now, I know he knows why that's dangerous, particularly in terrorism cases. So will he listen to them, and will he listen to his predecessor in this role, who's also warned that this could make the UK and, by extension, all of us less secure?
Can I just gently say to her that there is an issue around extraterritorial jurisdiction where we want to consult very carefully. But whether it's deportation of foreign national offenders, and no, I'm sorry, we will keep talking about that. It's something our constituents care about. It's a reform that needs to happen. Whether it's parole reform, which I believe we need to also undertake, whether it's the issue of separation centres in our most high-security prisons, all areas where I think the public, constituents of honourable members on all sides of the House, will expect us to take a common-sense approach, and this is exactly what our Bill of Rights will achieve.
Reason for this.